Welcome to Box Out Banter, where we are off the injury list, although we might be on, depending, given how everything else has gone this last week. We might
Last
soon
2
be on
weeks.
we too might soon be on the injured
The
reserve
injury
list.
report list. Yep.
So we'll talk about that a little bit. But before we start anything, Mr. Jordan Christmas, I do want to say rest in peace to Mr. Elgin Baylor, legend of legends.
Yeah.
And someone I think gets overlooked in a lot of like a GOAT and like greatest of all time and just top players of all time talk.
He's definitely an underrated. He's an underrated great for sure.
Yeah, like he was kind of the original Michael Jordan, Elgin, or not Elgin Baylor. His original like Dr. J style, like Skywalker kind of guy.
Scoring from the perimeter and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he was a hellacious rebounder also at 6'5". I mean, I was looking at some of his seasons earlier this morning, and he had a season where he averaged 38 and 18 and like 35 and 20 almost. Like he was ridiculous, and definitely an underrated grade. And you know, unfortunately we've lost a few legends in not just the NBA but just the sport of basketball in general. But Elgin was definitely he was definitely an underrated great. Obviously way past our time, but just one of those players you look at the basketball reference page and you're just like, whoa, holy shit.
And even when you look at, like, I feel like every time someone brings up old highlights, like you bring up Bob Cousy or you bring up, even Wilt and Russell, when you look at highlights, you're like, man, this is a different era of basketball. When you look at Elgin, man, Elgin looks like he would fit in the modern day NBA.
Yeah, especially if you think about, he'd probably be shooting more threes, obviously. But I mean, he had handle. It looked, from just the grainy footage, you could see like he had handle. He could score from the perimeter. He had some nice flip shots for a 6'5" guard.
He's getting to the basket. Yeah, he's getting to the basket. Like he plays like what a modern day wing does, and like you could tell that that's where a lot of
He had three straight seasons early in his career. From his second year to his fourth year, he had 3 seasons of averaging over 11 free throw attempts per game. So was it also, I assume, was just a bruiser, especially because he was one of the bigger forwards / guards at the time.
Right. So
but
yeah,
definitely a legend.
I do want to pay respects before we get started here, and moving on in to kind of, before we move to the tier list stuff, I do want to talk about the brash of injuries that we've run into over the last 2 weeks. With obviously LeBron is kind of the major one.
LaMelo, teams.
Yeah, LaMelo and Steph. And among other names, but those are sort of the big ones that come to mind right away. Joel Embiid as well. Our 2 top MVP runner-up, our favorites, went down over the last 2 weeks. So how do you feel?
Well, one, I feel bad for. Obviously, I feel bad for Embiid because that's the thing that's always going to stick with him. Kind of more so in a way, I'm like Anthony Davis, but not at the same time, where they just get those nicked up injuries every game that they pick up, and you're a little worried. Like, are they going to come back? And then they end up coming back, but they kind of just have nagging little injuries. Yeah. And Embiid, unfortunately, is one of those to a greater extent. I feel bad because he was finally putting it together by the All-Star break. To me, he was. For me, at least, when I say clear front runner, I mean he was ahead of LeBron. Like, I had Embiid, then LeBron in kind of like the next tier, and then Jokic behind him, and Giannis kind of like in a separate tier also. But when he went down with that injury, one, it looked bad. He put all of his 280 pounds on one leg, and you're obviously just sitting there, and your heart's just dropping. You don't even care about the fact that the Sixers are destroying the Wizards at that point. You just kind of wonder what's going to happen. And thankfully, it was just a bone bruise. And it kind of stinks because this was the season he was putting it together. You don't get many chances, I imagine, in an NBA career to win an MVP award. So it does kind of suck from that standpoint. But health is the number one most important thing for the Sixers right now. Somehow they're still the number one seed. They're winning games without Embiid, which was a trend that wasn't present earlier in the season. So he gets looked over by the end of the week, and we'll see if he comes back. And then LeBron going down. I mean, that injury, I didn't see the game live, but I saw the injury, obviously, and whenever LeBron like sprains an ankle or like hurts his hand or something like that, he kind of just rubs some dirt on it and comes back, right? But when you saw him just grabbing his leg and wincing in pain.
Yeah, I've never seen LeBron have that before.
Yeah, and it happened. I felt bad because you were having a great day. I'm sure it was a Saturday. It was a Saturday. You were celebrating your kid's birthday, and then LeBron's injury just happens on that day, and you're just like, at this point, the Lakers are just going to 2001 it, right? It looks like.
Yeah, it looks like that's going to be the case. And so yeah, we'll talk about it as we go over the teams. I'm not too worried. I'd actually think this is kind of a blessing in disguise in a weird way. But we can get into that as we get to the tier list. But yeah, I was just surprised with all of these injuries. I mean, we're still not 100% sure about LaMelo, because I think he's getting second opinions on trying to play through the rest of the year.
Everybody's favorite League Pass team of the year, the Hornets.
Absolutely, they are so much fun to watch. But yeah, I think,
and not to sound hipster, but I kind of feel like based on our podcast episodes, we were kind of at the front of the line, filling up the general admissions floor at the concert.
we were talking a lot about LaMelo Ball before he got even drafted. We didn't even know where he was going.
And he's even better than what we thought. So it's kind of just like if you were in early on the Hornets and in on Hornet stock, it's more than just diamond hands cashing in at this point.
To be fair though, we were saying they should tank for Cade, but
oh yeah, no. I still would have. I didn't think LaMelo. I'm just talking about strictly LaMelo being this good.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm not talking about the Hornet. I had no idea, dude. This is all a complete surprise, is what I'm saying. Like this, if you were in on the Hornets as like your fun League Pass team before the season started, this has to be like icing on the cake. You're just like, wow. Sure. You're like, wow, this team is way better than I thought. They are somehow always in tight games and pulling it out. Like, have you looked at their clutch stats? Like,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
They've been ridiculous. Terry Rozier has been ridiculous in the clutch. He's like their number one guy. LaMelo as a rookie is like a +1 on the net rating side in the fourth quarter, which I feel like for rookies, that's kind of tough to do. Like, he was good too. And then, of course, obviously Steph's injury as well. Like, there's been a lot of injuries this year. It seems like a lot of teams have been playing like over 10 different lineups and all that stuff. It's like we thought it was a weird season. It's a weird season.
Yeah. So let's get in. Before we off rail too hard, let's dive into the season. Then let's dive into this tier list.
Okay. So this is an updated tier list. I also renamed some of the tiers like I did last time.
Okay.
But
you want to lead us off with your names?
Okay, let's start off with tier 1. I titled it "Sorry, I know this is cheap, but they are still the favorites," and I put an asterisk next to the number 1. But if this all depends on Anthony Davis's health going into the playoffs, and if he gets in game shape by the playoffs. But I don't care if like they're the 6th seed going into the playoffs. If the Lakers show me a few good weeks of putting it together before the season's over, I feel comfortable, picking them wherever they are. I think on paper, this is still a really great roster, top down, even if maybe Laker fans want to kill Gasol every once in a while. He's going to show up and make smart plays in the playoffs. LeBron is still LeBron. I know it's I know it's a little insane to say that a 36-year-old with a high ankle sprain who is nearing 50,000 minutes is going to be okay. But at this point, I cannot point to anything else but to say, okay, I think LeBron's going to come back. It's kind of like, Brady versus age at this point. But I'm not so. The thing is, I'm not so sure about Anthony Davis. And if Anthony Davis isn't healthy, then I think the West is absolutely wide open. So I put the Lakers in their own tier with an asterisk if Anthony Davis is healthy. If not, I probably put them back in the tier 2 with the other teams we're probably going to talk about next.
Yeah, so I have them at 1. Obviously, I'm a Laker fan, so I have them at 1. I think the thing last night that kind of showed me was the Lakers played the Suns tough last night. And it was a thing where it gave me a little bit more hope because this season they've kind of been, we've talked about it a ton, but they've been really lazy and they've been kind of like lackadaisically going through the season. And so last night it was one of the first times I've really seen them try. And obviously they tried because they didn't have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And they gave the Suns all they could handle. I mean, the Suns pulled away at the end, but I think like they were in the game the entire time, which is more than I expected for them to playing a team like the Suns that are deep, that are good. I expected to fully get blown out by the Suns, and so the little effort that I saw was enough to convince me that okay, if we can get LeBron and AD back,
wasn't it like an 8-point game at one point too?
It was like a 6-point game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, in the fourth quarter, yeah.
And so, like, to me, when we don't have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and the Suns are at full strength, and obviously they're not taking it as seriously as any team either. But I mean, the thing is,
it was just a taking care of business type.
They're taking care of business kind of game, yeah. So I mean, it is a thing where it's a fire that I hadn't seen from the Lakers this season yet, and like it's something that gave me a lot of hope of like, okay, if they can get the stars back and we head into the playoffs, I think we're still the favorites, and I think like in a weird way, I have faith in LeBron to be able to recover, and it saves him, maybe 15, 20 games of wear and tear on his legs to push towards the playoffs. And like that's kind of what happens last year or during the bubble where we had that break in the middle. And obviously LeBron's going to be rehabbing and working out the entire time, but I mean it's a break right before the playoffs where they can just kind of go off and go nuts.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise for both LeBron and AD to kind of sit and have this time to rest and go through rehab and not be playing every day and going through this process. And obviously they're taking their time and AD's been shooting around for the first time, I think, in the first couple weeks. So
I think with AD, he came back too early the first time.
Yeah.
And, and then, because honestly, when he re-aggravated his injury against the Nuggets, like the way he was walking, I thought it was going to be more than a 3 to 4 week timetable, like they were saying. Or it still looks like it's going to be longer than that, obviously. But my point is, I thought it was going to be a bit worse than that. So I imagine they are going to be taking their time. I think the Lakers were in they were in a lose-lose situation with the season. Yeah, or I'd say a win-lose that they would gladly take every time. They won the championship, but the fact that the season turned around so fast for an older team like that, I imagine kind of caught up with them a little bit too. They still have the number 1 rated defense, which is crazy because Philadelphia's defense over the last 2.5 weeks has been leading the league by far in defensive rating. So the fact that the Lakers are still leading in defensive rating overall just shows that they still have that identity that they could kind of maybe tread water. I know their offense is not, good. It's middle of the pack, and it's definitely not great when LeBron is out of the lineup. So we're going to have to see. Maybe Frank Vogel can speed up the pace a little bit, get Dennis going a little bit more, and things like that. But
buyout market's coming. The Lakers are going to be big players. We've dumped spots for 2 players in the buyout market.
Yeah, stuff buyout maneuverability, any of that stuff. I don't think they should be making too crazy of moves though.
No, I think picking up a big and a shooter. So like any kind of a Drummond and Ariza's not going to get dropped, but someone like that, just a 3-and-D wing, I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, that would be that would be ideal for the Lakers. Yeah, I don't think the Heat are gonna drop Ariza.
No, not if you're trading for him. But that style
that type of player. Yeah. I'm not too worried about the Lakers. It's just 80's health for me. That's the main sticky point I have with this.
That's totally fair. Yeah, I think we're in agreement that if healthy, even if they're the 8th seed limping into the playoffs, I'd still take them over
Yeah, I would
the
still
entire
take them.
team.
Yeah. All right. So on to the next tier.
This is the interesting part. This is where it gets interesting.
All right. I'll let you go first. How many teams do you have in this tier? Or you have the floor.
I have two teams in this tier. Well, actually, sorry. I have one team in this tier.
One team.
Yeah, I have the Suns.
Okay.
I think the Suns are clear favorite behind the Lakers.
All right.
I think they've separated themselves from every other team. They're the only team that I don't have questions about and that I believe in. We'll get into the team that I don't believe in. I think it's the same team you don't believe in either.
All right.
I think they've separated themselves amongst the other top contenders. And then my next tier has like the bulk of most of the teams that we're going to discuss. I was noticing something too. The West drops off a cliff after the top 5.
Yeah, it drops off after the top 6 because Portland and Denver have the same record right now. And
I just mean in terms of like teams that I trust. I don't trust Portland to keep this up.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about just the standings in general.
No, I'm just saying like in terms of teams that I trust to be able to win a championship and like the teams that I would bet on to like to win in playoffs. I think it drops off a cliff after the top 5.
Okay. Yeah, no, I look, I was looking at my updated tier list before we got on, and I put Phoenix over Utah, like at the top of my tier, because I was thinking about it, and it was like, there's a lot of variables and formulas and a lot of bullshit we like to make up so we can justify our reason. For why
I just don't believe in them,
and I have that too, So I'm fully admitting it. The trust factor with this team, even though they haven't been in the playoffs in 10 years, I like the makeup of this team and the identity of this team when it's nut cutting time in the playoffs. One, because they have one of the greatest clutch players ever in Chris Paul. They have
leaders.
One of the greatest leaders ever in Chris Paul, or the point god himself in Chris Paul. They have Devin Booker, who is also he's a mid-range master. He could get his shot anywhere he wants on the court. He's lethal off the dribble. We all know Devin Booker's work as, one of the best 2 guards in the NBA. And I just feel like those 2 guys alone, when it's the playoffs and you're more reliant on half-court scoring, that is the team that I trust, that I know I could get a bucket within the last 5 minutes. They also seem to be figured out their identity. Unfortunately, DeAndre Ayton has had a weirdly inconsistent season. His defense has taken a step back, and also he's kind of been reduced to this catch radius guy around the basket, but for some reason his hands aren't as soft as they were last year. He's fumbling the ball. He's not going up with authority, so like I wish he has in the past. Like, I think DeAndre Ayton is a really good player, but it just seems like he's still trying to find himself. And they've been closing more with Dario Saric at the 5. Ayton and Saric at the 4 and the 5, can work, obviously. But for some reason, Dario at the 5 has just been just magic for Phoenix. Mikal Bridges, man, that trade is just, as a Sixer fan, that trade is just killing me every single time I see Mikal Bridges play. Because he's more than a 3-and-D player, dude. Like, he's driving to the basket. He's mixing. He's over the last month, he's been averaging almost 4 assists a game. Like this, he is continually adding stuff to his game, and he's going to be getting paid this offseason. I know there's some questions about like, who do you pay first, Bridges or Ayton? They can afford both. I think they should pay both. But the Suns have a lot of versatility, man, and they have, the gritty pieces like Saric. Javon Carter hasn't hardly played, but I think he's a good guard. I think this team is deep. They might be like a wing away, or a half a wing away to maybe take away some of Jay Crowder's minutes if they don't move Jay Crowder to the bench. But I really love the makeup of this team, man. They had an identity to start the year. They were a really good defensive team, and now their offense has caught up to them, and now they're 8th in offensive rating per cleaning the glass. And yeah, they are just solid top down, and they have two great players. So I also put the Suns over the Jazz, even though I respect a lot of what the Jazz do, but I have the Suns and the Jazz and the Clippers just in a tier. But I didn't do the separate tier for the Suns because I still want to see them do it. But I have them at the top of the pack for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. For me, it's just a thing of I just believe in this team so much. And I remember I picked them in the Western Conference Finals to begin with.
Oh yeah, that was one of your hot takes. I remember that.
And
you were on it early.
Yeah, I was like, dude, this team is really fucking good. And so, yeah, I've been watching them all year, and I love the growth. My worry was Booker. I didn't know if he struggled earlier in the season to fit into the Chris Paul centric offense. Like, I didn't know if he could fit in an offense that wasn't predicated around him and was a lot slower than what he was used to. But he's come on the second half, and he's really not even the second half, but he's come on the last couple months and really showed that he can play with his style, and he's playing really well. I agree with you on Ayton. I think that the thing is that I see every time with Ayton is Chris Paul is really forcing Ayton to grow. Like he is not letting Ayton go in terms of I
think this is going to be like a year. Like this is going to be a semi long term thing with Ayton, just figuring out where he's going to be at.
Yeah, but I think Chris Paul is dedicated and determined to get Ayton going and get Ayton to his place where he needs to be. Because every time I watch him, he is in his ear. He's telling him where to go. He's telling him where to spin, where to
so is
where
Book
to slide.
Too. The Book has been doing it as well. Yeah.
So I think they understand his potential, and I think they're working with him and to get there. So I fully expect him to, not be a negative and to be a net positive on the court when it comes to playoff time. We'll see, but I have a lot of faith in him. And again, I just love his raw potential. But
yeah, same.
But yeah, I think for me, it's Lakers, Suns, and I have the gaps between them, and then I have the gap then there, and then I have a third tier that is Jazz, Clippers, Nuggets.
Okay. See, I have a drop. We might have the tiers listed differently, but the teams kind of maybe
in the same order, right?
I imagine in the same order. But I have the Nuggets in a tier 3, so I put the Sun. So for tier 2 for me, I put conference final contenders. Like, who are the teams where I know they have a good shot at making the conference finals? Like, I would not be shocked if I saw them playing the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, right? So obviously I put the Suns ahead of them. I put the Jazz here, even though I do think in some ways, while I see their style making it to the Western Conference Finals, I do think they're also kind of frauds in the sense that I feel like once they run into a team like the Suns or the Lakers or even the Clippers, where they just have each team has two elite guys that could just destroy their defense no matter what kind of coverage they throw at it. I feel like the Jazz will be in trouble. I do think their saving grace for the Jazz is that they attempt a lot of three-pointers and they have four guys that could attack a closeout and make the correct decision. And then they have Donovan Mitchell, who, honestly, that's the only guy I see that's one of those. He showed it last year in the playoffs, but he's one of the only guys on that team that's the tough shot bucket getter. But the thing with Mitchell is when he's on, it looks great. But if you say, for example...
streaky.
Say for example, you watch the Sixers game before the All-Star break, and it came down to the wire, and it was Embiid versus Mitchell. Who would you take in that situation? Well, obviously you would take Embiid, and that it proved to be the case. Mitchell started taking over, and he made some tough shots, but then he started shooting his team out of the game, and ended up being like 12 for 34 or something like that. So Mitchell will have those games, as talented as he is, and I think he's taken a leap this year. I do think that the Jazz are weaker in that department in terms of having that, talented, explosive scorer that can give you that consistency all playoffs. I think Mitchell could do it. He did it for a round, but the Jazz are definitely the weakest in that department. And also, I feel like their style, if you could gum it up a little bit, they're there won't be another alternative plan other than maybe going to Mitchell and being like, "Hey, go create a bucket." And the Jazz have been fun this year. Like I said, it's it's a little bit 2014 Spurs-esque in the way that just nightly you would see clips of them just where the ball's popping around the perimeter, and it ends up in either an easy Rudy Gobert dunk once the ball moves side to side, or Mike Conley runs pick and roll with Gobert, and that chemistry has been ignited this year. But I just think the Jazz, I just can't see the Jazz coming out of the West. And honestly, if they played the Suns in a series, I would probably take the Suns just because of what we were talking about earlier. I just think there are two teams, maybe three with the Clippers. I have some reservations about the Clippers on the defensive side of the ball that we'll probably talk about, but I just don't think the Jazz can the Jazz make the Western Conference Finals? Absolutely. Can they get out of it? No, they cannot. And also, I'm still a little bit charged up from that Sixers win over the Jazz just because Utah fans are just they're literally the worst. There's always stories about players hearing racist stuff thrown at them in the games. So SLC Dunk, the SB and Nation blog, is one of the most insufferable Twitter accounts that I have seen over the years, and the most insufferable blogs I have seen over the years. So when I saw that, when the Jazz lost to the Sixers, of course, Sixers Twitter had their night because the Jazz got all mad because of the foul calls and all that stuff, even though their presumed defensive player of the year could not stop Embiid and was moved by Embiid like a rag doll. And then for them to be the last two picks in the All-Star draft, not gonna lie, that was pretty funny.
It was pretty funny.
But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Jazz. Utah sucks.
Yeah, I was laughing because I was like, man, we're gonna really slander the Jazz. Yeah, I just don't believe in them. I think I totally agree with you, Donovan Mitchell. He has the sort of shooter's mentality that I appreciate and I respect, but I just
like
don't.
An unstable gas can.
Yeah, he has that like, yeah, I'm gonna go off, and you're like, cool. Could you not? Like, we have a good team. We don't need to do that.
Yeah,
and then he'll just go off and he'll just try to like shoot his way. Like it's the chip on your shoulder thing. It's the same thing that I don't know if you're hearing the rumors with Trae Young, where he has it's the chip on your shoulder, which you love. You love the fire, but then you also have the overwhelming need to prove yourself, where you then take your team out of the game by trying to prove yourself.
And I want to be fair because I do think he's gotten better at that this year. That's why the Jazz have been so great offensively, even though they've been going through this weird stretch lately. But there are games where you see it just coming out, and it's like, oh, there it is. There's the Frankenstein eye I see, like, and then he turns back into a normal human.
Yeah,
like you see it.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you there. Yeah, I don't believe in them. As bad as it sounds, like I just don't have any kind of faith in them as a team. Or I don't have faith in them to keep this going into the playoffs, and so yeah, that's why I have them lower. Clippers, I also have concerns. It goes back to the same concern that I had before with them being a jump shooting team and them not being able to create easy baskets. I think if they get Lonzo Ball, it helps, but it doesn't quite solve their issue. Because Lonzo is also just a shooter. He is not he can drive to the basket. He doesn't have that aggressive mentality though, so he doesn't do it. But yeah, the
only two guys who really do it semi-consistently are Paul George and Kawhi, and then the rest of the guys they're all jump shooters.
But even Paul George and Kawhi, they're not natural go to the basket.
Yeah.
Like they're not their first.
That's why I said semi.
Yeah. So like it just makes it so weird because I think that's why they give up a lot of games at the end, is because they have no way to generate easy baskets. They're completely reliant on their jump shooting, and I don't know how you feel about this. I don't know how much Clippers games you've watched. Kawhi's knees, especially at the end of games, he does not move the same.
Yeah, that's the other thing too is Kawhi has been known to have this thing going on with his leg.
We'll find out eventually, like at the end of his career, but there's something.
Yeah, it's like he needs rest every few days just to recharge or whatever. He's still playing great this year. It's almost identical stuff to his Toronto, because he was there. There was a stretch where he was in the MVP conversation for a while
Yeah,
too. But my main concern with the Clippers is, yes, they don't have that Lonzo, or even I think Kyle Lowry would move any team into the
sure.
next tier. But that connector, that they still don't have that point guard that, is situationally aware, can control the pace, make the right play, could get the teams into their offensive sets. As much as Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have taken leaps as playmakers, it's more so they're creating off of each other as opposed to, putting the team in offensive sets and,
Yeah,
naturally reading the defense on the fly instead of, ISOing at the top and then asking for a screen. My other concern about the Clippers is they are just not an elite defense anymore.
no,
Last year they were an elite defense, and that was with half of the time playing without both Kawhi and Paul George. Now they're 21st in defensive rating per cleaning the glass. They allow 113 points per 100 possessions. The offense is obviously still there. A lot of the offensive stuff statistically is similar to, the Doc Rivers team last year, which is, kind of not concerning, but it's interesting considering a coaching change is what was allegedly needed. But their defense has just taken a step back. They were an elite defense last year. More so, they allow too many points at the rim. They are 21st in rim defense. Opponents shoot 65% at the rim against the Clippers. And I think Harrell, even though you don't think of him as a traditional rim protector, he was someone who would take charges, and he was someone who would also, get the occasional emphatic weak side block where you hear him through the basket mic saying, "Give me that shit." And they're and Zubac is a big body in the middle, but Serge Ibaka is not the rim protector he used to be, even though he could still get up there every once in a while. And once you get past the elite perimeter defense of Paul George and Kawhi, who's there to stop them. And then not only that, I think they've taken a step back defensively on the perimeter as well. Like it's odd because they have games where they can clearly hang with the elite teams in the NBA, but you could just see so clearly there are some fatal flaws with this team where they could get upset again in the second round. This team could be in the Western Conference Finals.
it would not surprise me.
It would not surprise me. We could get our long-awaited Clippers, Lakers Western Conference Finals, which I think would actually be more lopsided than what maybe I would have thought last year. But I could also see somebody like the Nuggets or the Blazers, one of these lower tier teams, just come up from behind and, just eliminate the Clippers in the early rounds, and it just wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. It comes down to a thing where I just don't. Again, people making excuses for them of like, hey, regular season games doesn't matter, and I agree to a certain extent, but there's a certain point where it hits where you go, man, they're giving up a lot of games that they have won. Like they are giving up a lot of leads, and it's concerning. And when you really look into why or how they're giving up these games, it's because they're just missing shots down the stretch, or they're giving up easy buckets. So when you're giving up easy buckets, like you can't defend the rim and then you can't attack the rim.
Yeah, that's kind of
all that stuff matters, man.
Yep. Yeah.
And that becomes extremely important down the line. So,
and like Nick Batum, as much as it's been unexpected that he would be in the starting lineup all this year and be an important part, I think that is also the problem, is that Nick Batum is playing an important part in the Clippers lineups. I mean, it's the whole, like, if the ball swings to him in the playoffs for an important shot, what is your confidence level that shot's going in? And it's like, he could wedgie the side of the rim. That's how, like, Nick Batum, I'm glad that he finally decided to try, but he's still not a good player. They just have not good players. They just have players that are a little bit underqualified for the role that they're in. And also they're paying guys like Luke Kennard $64 million to just sit on the bench. Reggie Jackson's getting important minutes. Lou Williams falls apart in the playoffs every year. He's having a decent season off the bench this year, but he's 34 now, and he's heading into probably another playoffs where he's going to struggle because he's small and can't defend. It's just this team is good, but can they come out of the West? I don't think so.
Neither do I. I'm in total agreement with you there.
As you can tell, but I think the Lakers are still coming out of the West.
Yes, even with the injuries, I think they're still coming out of the West.
All right, so next tier.
So this is where I had the Nuggets here in this tier, and so you have them separate.
Yeah, I do not have them as a conference final contender.
I didn't until this recent stretch where Paul Millsap has been out.
Okay.
I really like MPJ at the 4.
Yes, that is MPJ at the 4 is a nice development, and also probably, his position for the future, like everybody says.
Yeah, I think he defensively is so much better at the 4. I think he's quick enough to guard 4s. I think he's better guarding 4s than he was wings.
It's where you limit his flaws the most, for sure.
Yeah, I think that his ability to stretch and take bigger 4s out, off the dribble is gigantic for this team.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're able to play him more at the 4. I think that Millsap being out has sort of been a blessing in disguise of like, oh, then now this works. And I think if they continue down that path, and then Millsap comes back and maybe plays off the bench or plays less of a role, it allows Michael Porter Jr. to flourish more in the 4. I think that this development could be huge for them. Their offense and both their offense and their defense looks so much more fluid with him at the 4, and it surprised me how much it changed my mind about them. So I could be knee jerk reacting here, just watching them for a week or so with this new development. But yeah, it's completely changed my way of thinking around them. Like if this becomes the new norm and they keep progressing in this way, it wouldn't surprise me if they are in the discussion down the line.
Well, I mean, it's not like you're overreacting to like a recent 3-game sample or whatever. I mean, this team has been playing well for the better part of a month now. They're 25-17. They're 5th in the Western Conference. The other thing that we should also mention is that Jamal Murray probably over the last 15 games or so has been playing better than bubble Jamal Murray. Even though, Millsap being out is also a blessing in disguise too, because I think he's long in the tooth now, and also he's just not the same versatile player that could play next to Jokic. But definitely Porter going to the 4 spot has definitely changed things a bit, especially offensively. But the reason I still have the Nuggets in the next tier, which is tier 3, surprise we out here, surprise we out here in these streets. I have the Nuggets and the Blazers in this tier. I think the Nuggets could be gaining enough momentum for a run at the conference finals again, which is why I have them here. The things that hold me back with the Nuggets is their defense might look more fluid, but I think it's a little too, for lack of a better phrase, I think it's too soft for me. I still think you could probably physically move around Porter, even though he could probably keep up with, perimeter-oriented 4s more. He definitely has an advantage on the offensive end. But to me, it's just Nikola Jokic just dragging this team, along with Jamal Murray, who has, over the last 17 games, averaging 25 a game on 50% shooting from the field and nearly 50% from 3. He's been absolutely insane, especially after the slow start he had where it was like, oh, there goes Jamal Murray again. He can average 18 points during the regular season, but when you want him to take that leap, well, he's kind of been taking the leap. He's taken the leap over the last 20. If you want to go back to the 20-game sample, he's been averaging close to 24 on the same percentages, but he has been amazing. So it's not just maybe the lineup change. I think to me, it's Murray also has been instrumental in this turnaround. Will Barton starting a bit too. But I just
Do you still believe in Will Barton?
believe it, like, in what sense?
That he's a starter and he's worth his money.
I think he could be a on this type of team. I think he should be a spot starter, probably. I think he's a spot starter, 6-man scorer guy. Is ultimately his ceiling. I would not pay him more than that, and I'm glad that whenever there were probably rumblings at the start of the year of who's going to start, and Will Barton was saying he wanted to start, I'm glad Mike Malone has kind of sifted through all that. But yeah, I mean, I don't believe. Do I believe Will Barton as a bona fide starter wherever team he goes? No. Do I believe he can be a helpful player on a contender like the Nuggets? Yes, I do. I do think the Nuggets also missed Will Barton last year as well. They just needed that extra scorer from the perimeter, I feel. But yeah, Jokic, I think the main thing, just let me just read off his stats because they're absolutely ridiculous. It's 27.1 points per game, 11.2 rebounds, 8.6 assists, 57% shooting, 42.5% from three, and almost 87% from the free throw line. This is literally one of the best offensive seasons of all time with a bullet, and it's coming from the center position, which is great. Jokic has just been, he's been ridiculous, and it's like no matter where he is on the floor, it's a good shot for him. He could do his Sombor shuffle and it'll go in. He could do the Dirk one-legged, it'll go in. He'll run you over and do a soft little hook shot, it'll go. He is just so supremely skilled. And I think anytime, the other reason why I named this tier Surprise We Out here is because in the playoffs, like the scenario last year, if you come into the playoffs, you know, with not maybe the strongest team around your tier one franchise player, but with a tier one franchise player armed and ready to go, I think the Nuggets absolutely have a shot to beat. I think they could beat the Clippers. I think they could beat the Jazz. Jokic takes Rudy Gobert to the woodshed every time the Nuggets play the Jazz. So I could definitely see the Nuggets beating the Jazz in a 7-game series there. Suns, that might be a little bit tough, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Nuggets beat the Jazz. Blazers, who I have next, might be a little. I'd be shocked if the Blazers made it to the conference finals. But I think
that just means Dame went off.
But the thing is, yeah, Dame is a tier one franchise player. I also think the Blazers have just been too riddled with injuries this year. That I don't think they're going to have time towards the end of the season to even, coalesce properly. Dame has been literally holding this team together with duct tape and bubble gum, and Gorilla Glue. It's kind of been ridiculous what he's
threes
doing.
Into the holes. Plug up these holes.
Pretty much. He's just been launching, and also apparently he's just going to have a 1,000% true shooting percentage in the clutch. So that would be why I have the Blazers in here as well. But as far as the Nuggets go, this would be the team where I'm like, okay, they could probably make a run to the conference finals again, and I wouldn't be surprised. But they just have a weaker team than the other three teams I mentioned above.
Yeah, totally agree.
What's your feeling on the Blazers? I'm
with you of just like Dame's awesome, but he can only do so much.
Yeah, Dame can only do so much, man.
And in the playoffs, when things slow down and when defenses start targeting him, I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, especially when he already is target, but they're just going to focus exclusively on him and be like, okay, Gary Trent, go ahead.
Yeah, when they start really focusing in and honing in on him, and in a 7-game series, I don't know if his legs are going to hold up.
Yeah, just wear him down.
Just wear him down, and that kind of game only worked for so long, and especially in the playoffs, I don't see that happening. So that's why I had them below the Nuggets in a different tier, because I feel like the Nuggets just have more tools.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Because
the Blazers are just out of range with the contenders. Where if I would be surprised if they beat any of the tier 2 teams, right? But I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if they beat the Nuggets in a series, or they end up, they're going to be the 6th seed, so it's not like they're going to be playing any of the lower seeds. But But if I'm looking at the other teams below them, I think they could beat all of them, one in a series, and I think they have better tools. I think the Blazers have better tools than the other teams below them to get out of to get it or to get deeper into the playoffs, except for one team in the next tier. But let's move on to
my next tier is huge.
Okay. All right. How many teams?
My sardine can is here.
Yes, we brought back the sardine can. We're restocking. And so how many teams are in this sardine can?
I have 5 teams in the sardine can.
Okay. All right.
I have a third of the conference in this sardine can.
All right. The play-in area is definitely a sardine can at this point. But who do you have?
I have Mavericks, Warriors, Spurs, Pelicans, Grizzlies in that order.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about so sorry, wait, who was your first team again?
Mavericks.
Mavericks. Okay. So I have the Mavericks here in this first in this tier 2. I called it the play-in gulag. So I have the Mavericks, Spurs, Grizzlies, and Warriors in here. I do not have the Pelicans in here. I will get into that in a second. But the Mavericks have been playing a hell of a lot better. I got to give them credit. Porzingis has looked like he's played a little bit better. Looks like he's starting to knock the rust off. But Luka has been absolutely absurd over the last 15, 20 games. Yeah, this was the Luka that we thought was going to, go into the year as one of the Vegas odds MVP favorites. But he's been shooting up 40% from 3 over his last handful of games. The Mavericks have been 8-10 in their last 10, and their better play has gone far beyond that stretch, obviously. But they're the one team where I could see them going into the next tier. And because they have somebody like Luka, who is a big winged creator who can also score, I think actually they could have a higher ceiling than the Blazers if they could get it together. The thing with the Mavericks is I don't trust their supporting cast as much. It's kind of feast or famine. Josh Richardson is showing as we keep getting removed from his one good season in Miami that might be an admiration, that he might just be
he went from one of the most valuable trade assets in the league for about 4 or 5 years to now everyone realizing why do we have him that high?
yeah, like he's a good defender who is a really streaky 3-point shooter and also takes dribble in mid-range jumpers that are terrible. But
dude, think about it. He was the linchpin of so many trades, and people were like, "No, we can't get rid of Josh.
We can't get rid of Josh Richardson." And that's what we thought last year. We were like, "Oh, we finally got the guy that has been coveted in a lot of trades." Josh Richardson, 3-and-D guy, got better every year in Miami. Finally had a really great career year, and now
it's so weird because to me, he's like everyone thinks that he's like Robert Covington, and no one thinks Robert Covington's good. And you're like, bro, I feel like people underrate Robert Covington and overrate Josh Richardson. Like, I don't understand.
Oh, okay, no, trust me. As somebody who has been a long defender of Robert Covington, don't even talk to me about how underrated I think he is.
I love him. I think he's great.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying. I am getting flashbacks of all the debates and wars with NBA Twitter when my little old tweets would just find themselves in the wilderness of wolves, on the trending topic. Like I remember I co-hosted a Sixers podcast for a basketball blog I used to write for. I used to co-host a Sixers podcast with a dude who just, respect to the guy. I'll just say we had different thoughts about basketball. I'll just say that. And so we argued about Robert Covington all the time, as you can imagine. But yeah, no, Josh Richardson, it turns out he might be overrated a little bit. He's just enough of a ball handler to where if he's your secondary guy, he'll get you in trouble. He has enough of a handle to get you in trouble. He's a streaky 3-point shooter, shooting 32% this year. It's just the Mavericks supporting cast. I have to see. I have to trust them in the playoffs. They've been too up and down for me this year. Porzingis is definitely knocking off some rust, like I mentioned, and their offense has been getting back together. But the main thing for me is if Luka keeps playing this way,
Moving them up.
it's you got to move them up the tier, and they got to be a dark horse team heading into the playoffs. So they might be in the play-in gulag now, but they're definitely respawning if they make it out.
I love it.
Yeah, he's Luka over his last 20 games is shooting 43% from three. I think he's starting to figure out his shooting touch, and I think he was always going to figure it out. It was. I think I think the thing with Luka is we want so much from Luka now that we thought, it's his third year. Why isn't he a 40% 3-point shooter yet? Which, if you think about it on the surface, is kind of absurd to expect that already. But we knew he was going to figure out the 3-pointer eventually. And of course, he's been throwing some absolutely like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson level passes, that LeBron level passes that I'm just like, what the fuck am I watching right now? Like the Luka's, he's that dude. He's that dude. That's why I would probably put them over the Blazers eventually. I wouldn't be surprised if this season ends and the Mavs are over the Blazers for me in the tier list.
Yeah, for sure.
Completely. So agree. The next team, the Spurs. The reason I have the Spurs here and why they have a better record than the Mavericks, I just don't. For me, it's the Luka thing. DeJounte Murray's been. Guy. Yeah, they don't have the guy. DeJounte Murray's been great this year. DeMar DeRozan, I think we can now classify him as, although saying that he's underrated, if you watch basketball, we all know DeMar DeRozan has been kind of underrated the last few years. Like, he's been turning it around. He's been a better passer. He's been a more efficient scorer in his time in San Antonio. But so it's not a surprise to us but he might. I think he's starting to become an overrated, underrated player. You know how everybody for a long time was like, Mike Conley's the most underrated point guard in the NBA. And it's like, well, if everybody's saying that, how is he underrated? Right. But I think DeMar DeRozan has definitely transformed himself. And so that, to me, is why I think that's an advantage in a play-in situation. They have a bunch of young guys that I like. Keldon Johnson just bullies his way to the rim. Patty Mills is now kind of the old sage guy coming off the bench and still shooting threes at a high level. Finally, the whole LaMarcus Aldridge thing, at least part of that saga is over. He's not playing as much. But the Spurs bench is incredible again. Pop has kind of retooled this roster and retooled the playing style. And now young guys like DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, guys I haven't even heard of, like Luka Simonic, I think is how you pronounce his name. Just the Spurs are full of surprises, and last year it wasn't so great, and there was a little bit of rumblings through the basketball Twitter community and all that stuff about like, oh, I haven't really liked the decisions the Spurs have made the last few years. Some of their draft picks haven't really, panned out. Now I will say a lot of their draft picks are good players, but what are they ultimately going to be down the road? And when are you going to start thinking about maybe moving some of these guys? Because you can't pay everybody and lock yourself down with this type of roster. But they've hit on draft picks. They're flexible now. They still have younger players coming in through the pipeline, and they are definitely getting valuable experience, and they're 5 games above 500, which is definitely way more ahead than I thought they were going to be this year. So this is why Pop to me is the greatest coach ever.
Yeah, totally agree. I think right now I'm just banking on the Spurs role players to be role players. But like you said, the reason I have the Warriors and the Mavericks ahead of them is just the star power. I just trust Steph and Luka more. Where I don't feel like, as good as DeRozan is, I just don't. I think he's a star, and I think he's someone that can carry a team to a point. Luka and Steph are superstars, and there's guys that that I trust more. The Steph injury is a concern, and I'm still
their supporting cast, man, and their coaching. I can't.
I'm still so confused.
I can't. I think we're starting to figure out that maybe Steve Kerr is more of a Phil disciple than a Pop disciple.
Yeah, just let the talent work its magic. He's the mind
Yeah,
gamer.
he's like, no, the talent is going to adjust to the system, not the other way around. And also, like, he does like the weird Phil Jackson substitution patterns where like Steph's going into the fourth quarter with like 7 minutes left in the game, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what? Like, what's going on here? So I get what you're saying about the Warriors. And absolutely, I am a Steph stan. I defend Steph everywhere I go, but I just do not trust, outside of Steph and Draymond, I do not trust the rest of the team around it. Even if Wiggins is having a good year, even if Oubre has turned it around since stinking it up like a trash can to start the year. Some of their
you don't trust Oven Mitts himself, Mr. James Wiseman,
Mr. Oven. Mr. Ovenvitz. Yeah, his hands have been, I will say, the last few games, his hands have been better. I'm just like, whoa, you didn't fumble it for the 5th time this game. It was only the 3rd time.
Bro, there's times it's weird, and it's funny to me how much, because he has some great touch on his jumper.
Yeah.
He can shoot the ball. And I just can't, when you have the touch like that,
why can't you
pops? Well, why can't you just grab the ball? Like, you obviously have good feel with the ball in your hands. You normally, guys don't have touch if they don't have good feel with the ball in their hands, and usually it's a good sign of hands when you have and feel for the game if you can shoot like that. Man, he just like, dude, I don't understand. The ball just like it's like his hands.
It's like he's trying to catch a watermelon. Like, it's really.
I don't know if you'll get the. You might. You're the same age as me. You might. Do you remember Flubber?
Yeah, I remember. It's been a long time since I've seen Flubber.
It's like James put Flubber on his shoes like they do in the movie, right? And then he's jumping out of the gym and he's making all these moves. He's jumping in the air, but then he forgot to wash his hands. So the flubber's still on his hands, so they just bounce off his hands, right?
What a reference! I love it. I love it.
It's a stretch, but like, you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. No, hey, as somebody who also does some obscure references, I am with you fully on this. Like, it's really weird because he has some great touch. Once he catches the ball around the basket. Like, he can lay it up with touch. There'll be defenders like keeping their hands up around him, and he'll just rise up softly and get him.
He can even handle. He has dribble. Like,
he can dribble the ball. Yeah, like he could. Like, there is obviously, there's just things that are raw with Wiseman that'll come with time, and also I just think Steve Kerr needs to just start running more pick and rolls and pick and pops with Wiseman. Can we stop posting him up, please? Like. Post him up sometimes, but like, the guy has a great face. He obviously is more comfortable facing up. He has a nice touch on his jumper, nice handle. So let's just keep it simple for the rook, you know. But it's the supporting cast around the Warriors that I think as a team, obviously the Warriors have the top 3 guy in Steph, right? But it's just like a bunch of really just. It's a really below average supporting cast once you go beyond Steph and Draymond. And that's why I have the Spurs above them, is just because I think the coaching's better. I think in terms of take out Steph and Draymond, the Spurs team is way more talented and better than the Warriors team. And so I don't even know if Steph could average like 35, 5 and 5 on like a 70 true shooting percentage. And I'm not so sure the Warriors would make it out of the play. This is my point.
This is fair. It's totally fair. I think to me, there's huge questions with every team in this.
Oh yeah, this is the gulag. Of course,
yeah.
Of course there are questions. Like, this is why the Grizzlies are in here for me too. So I have the Spurs, then the Grizzlies, then the Warriors. Just because I think the Grizzlies do have some star power with John Morant, even if he's been inconsistent and was injured to start the year. I like the Wizards. I like the Grizzlies' talent from top to bottom. I like I can't believe the Suns had DeAnthony Melton at one point.
Yeah,
And then they
I
traded
love
him.
Anthony Melton.
Like he is a
We've
when
talked
the
about
Suns
Anthony Melton.
when the Suns signed him, I was like, oh man, this could be really good. But they traded him. I like the rookies they have: Desmond Bain, Xavier Tillman. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. hasn't even played yet. They just have so much talent from top to bottom. And Justice Winslow finally came back. They have so much talent from top to bottom that I think that I would like their makeup. I like in a play-in game, especially as as they start to get more rhythm and consistency together. I just think from top to bottom, I like the Grizzlies roster more than the Warriors roster as well. Even if the Warriors have Stephen Curry and Draymond, it's the same thing with the Spurs. Except the Grizzlies have they're probably a little bit more high octane than the Spurs, but they're just a little bit too inconsistent for me to put them above the Spurs, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
But I like I've always been a fan of the Grizzlies' talent and the youth on that team, and also I really want to see, now that Justice Winslow's back, how he's going to fit in with this team. Hopefully, he can stay healthy and all that. But I think going into the playoffs, this would probably be my 4 right now, as of right now. Mavericks, Spurs, Grizzlies, Warriors.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I have the
But you
Pelicans
said you had the
slightly out there.
Pelicans.
I do. I have them slightly on the outside looking in. I love Point Zion. I can't get over Point Zion.
Does it? I love Point Zion too, but does it concern you that Stan Van Gundy has not done a good job coaching this year? They blow a lot of double-digit leads, especially in the fourth quarter, and apparently they can't seem to figure out who gets the ball in crunch time. The guy who shoots,
the guy who can't be stopped, or the guy
who can't be stopped at the rim, or the guy that shoots mid-range jumpers.
Yeah,
does any of that concern you?
The power struggle concerns me because I don't think BI quite I think BI has sort of been touted as the guy. Like, he was touted as the guy in LA for so long, and then finally now he gets his chance to be the guy. Where now I feel like his talent has finally matched the expectation of him, and so I think there is an expectation that he is the guy. But at the same time, I think Zion is too nice of a player and too much of a team player to really take on and say, like, yeah, okay, this is mine. Just, again, I don't know him personally, but I'm just by the way that everyone talks about Zion and the way that he carries himself.
He's definitely a team first guy.
He's such a team first guy that I think he just kind of says, okay, BI, go.
Yeah.
Where I think he needs to demand the ball a little bit more in those crunch situations.
I also think Stan Van Gundy needs to draw up plays for Zion too, which is the other thing.
Yeah, I'm infatuated with Point Zion. I'm infatuated with Lonzo finally getting some respect that he deserves. But yeah, again, they're the weirdest team. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Every time I watch them, I'm like, man, they look so good. And then the fourth quarter comes,
and then they just
like collapse.
My God, I've seen like 5 or 6 this year, and I know there's more than that. Like that Portland one last week, I believe that was one of the most egregious ones. And now look, Dame hit some ridiculous shots, but you could just see it was like it's like a predictable plot point in a show. Like you've seen a show so many times and you're just like, okay, this is how it's going to go. And boom, next thing you know, a couple turnovers here, a Brandon Ingram missed jumper there, a missed putback here. Blazers start slowly creeping in. Timeout. It's 5 minutes left. Pelicans are still up 8. Not feeling too great, but you're still in the lead. And then next thing you know, you're losing. And it's just there's just things that I struggle with the Pelicans, like the fact that Stan Van Gundy was touted as a guy that was going to make this team play defense, and in fact, they are 28th defensively per cleaning the glass. They allow 117.4 points per 100 possessions, which, by the way, the next team up, 27th, they are behind the 27th team by nearly 2 full points per 100 possessions. Like, this team is bad defensively. By the way, Sacramento is literally one of the worst defensive teams of all time. They are almost allowing 120 points per 100
Oh
possessions.
my god.
Yeah, it's awful, dude. The Kings lost to the Sixers, got blown out by the Sixers without Embiid or Ben Simmons. Like, that is insane. But anyway, back to the Pelicans. I just don't. I think I had questions about Stan Van Gundy going into the year. I still thought he was a good coach, but I did have my concerns about, how did he change his coaching style? Is he going to come in with the same mentality and all that stuff? And it sounds like for the most part, it's more the same stuff, or at least he hasn't figured out the problems that plagued the Pelicans last year that allegedly Alvin Gentry was responsible for, because they're still a really good offense once again. But then, Eric Bledsoe will play crunch time minutes, and it's like, no, what is he doing? Stop, please. And then, do we play Steven Adams and clog the paint up for Zion, or do they just have a lot? They have a lot of weird pieces, and I think their GM has also made this roster weird in a way. Like, this kind of crunched this roster in a weird way, and now they have to make some decisions. Do they trade Lonzo? Can they give Lonzo $20 million? Do you want to tie your cap space up with Lonzo Ball and a few other pieces? I do think I don't believe this, but I do think, you're already hearing it from guys like Bill Simmons and stuff, but you're going to start hearing rumblings about, can Ingram and Zion play together, much like you heard the same shit with Simmons and Embiid. But
yeah,
there's just stuff brewing.
I think Ingram and Zion are a better fit, like natural fit, than Embiid and Simmons.
Yeah,
but I understand the concern. But yeah,
offensively at least.
Yeah, offensively at least. I think defensively they're still a total mess. But for me, I'd put them in this tier just because, look, they're a game out of the play-in spot, of the 10th spot. Given all of these concerns, and I've just seen them
2.5.
Oh yeah, 2.5. So I've just seen them too many close games against really, really good teams where they have the game won and they just give it up. And like, to me, when I look at a team,
when it looks good, it looks good.
Yeah, and I just look at a team and I go, man, if they can just tweak one or two things, if they can just get consistent, which again, they were right before the bubble, they were coming on hot.
Mm-hmm.
And like, Lonzo's a notorious slow starter. Ingram is a notorious slow starter. So, if in this second half they can turn it on and at least get a little better, I could see them getting one of the playoff spots. And not even a little better, just a little more consistent. Just right? And like that.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, the Grizzlies have been the Grizzlies the entire year. The Spurs, like, all the teams above, except for maybe the Warriors and the Mavericks, I think, like, well, okay, so like Grizzlies, Spurs, mainly who I'm talking about, like, I know what they are, and they've been the same way the entire year. They played really, really well. I still feel like there's room, and we've seen that there's room with the Pelicans where, like, man, they have a lot of leads in a lot of games, and they give them up. And all it's going to take is a little bit of tweaking, and if they can tap into it somehow, then I think they can beat out those teams.
For starters, just give Zion the damn ball in crunch time, please.
Yeah,
I don't mind Ingram. Look, I think Ingram's a good player. I think he'll be an all-star type of player, but I think Zion is already better than Ingram.
To me, Zion's generational. To me,
Zion.
Zion's like
I mean, I don't think I'm going out. I know Zion's only played 60 odd games or something like that, but it's pretty clear to me that Zion's better than Ingram, even with Ingram's improvements and the type of ceiling that I think he has.
30 points the other night on like 14 shots.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Like, he's consistently averaging over 25 a game on like Shaq level efficiency or Giannis level efficiency around the rim. Like, it's absurd. Like, and the fact that they finally put him in situations where he could triple threat face up and use that lightning, that I don't even know what to call that first step. From catch to takeoff is like the most exhilarating thing in the NBA for me. Is Zion's like catch the ball into the first step, because you're just like, okay, here it comes, because you know it's coming, but the dude, a dude who is that huge moving like that, next thing you know, he teleports to the rim and he's like flying into a body and scoring. And it's like, even in that Blazers game, like Lonzo just threw a full court, just perfect dime to Zion at the end, and they still had a chance to win it, even though they, choked the lead or whatever. But after the free throws, Lonzo just took the ball and threw a laser perfect Patrick Mahomes-esque pass to Zion, who just jumped up, grabbed it, and tried to get off as clean of a layup as you could, and it almost went in. Like, the dude is a finishing machine. I like his technique when he finishes around the rim. Just everything about it. And that is one tweak I think they could fix. I would hope Stan Van Gundy would at least, do that, because you're right. As much as low as I think I'm starting to get on the Pelicans, just because of their inconsistency and the infrastructure and how they built the team. And I think David Griffin has been overrated as a general manager for a long time. Even though I definitely would have taken him over Brian Colangelo. I'll just say that. But you look at Zion and you're just like, but there's the guy right there, like, and he's been healthy this year. So I got to give it to him. He's been healthy this year. So the Pelicans could definitely teeter back into the gulag, but to me, they're in tier 5 for me, navigating youth. And this is where I have the Oklahoma City Thunder slightly ahead of the Pelicans, because at least I know, and yes, 95% of it is because Pokusevski has been starting. No, and in all seriousness, I think the Thunder have an identity, kind of. And I think for a young team with identity, I don't think the Pelicans really have an identity. I don't know what the hell they are. I do know that the Thunder are led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is going to be one of the special point guards in the league. They are competent defensively. They play hard. I think I'm trying to figure out. I think it was Tyler Parks of The Ringer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but earlier in the season, he appropriately nicknamed Lou Dort Knox, which I think is just an amazing. I think it is an amazing nickname for a guy like Lou Dort. Did you see the Rockets game the other night? Or at least the end of it.
Where he got the block?
Where he got the block on John Wall, the game sealing block, and knocked it off John Wall out of that. That's the type of stuff that is like, I was maybe it was going into the year, I was a little naive and I put the Thunder higher than a lot of people did. I had them as a play-in team only because I knew this team was going to play hard. And yes, Chris Paul wasn't there, but I just think maybe it was maybe it was me believing in some voodoo bullshit where it was like, oh, Chris Paul's residual culture was left behind and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander learned it and is spreading it to his teammates or whatever. But I like the Thunder's identity. They play hard. They're a competent defense. Offensively, it's going to be a struggle at times, but I like that their young players aren't scared. I like that Pokusevski in the same game can throw 3 behind the back passes when he can normally just swing the ball like a normal player should and turn it over, but then in the same game make like 5 threes in a row. Like, I just love the confidence of these players, and I like a lot of the younger players and the veterans on that team more so than I do for the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans have I think they have the one incandescent star in Zion Williamson, right? But to me, it's a lot of odd fitting pieces. To me, the Thunder have more better fitting pieces, even though they're raw. And yes, Pokusevski is probably the worst player in the NBA, but he's awesome. I love watching Pokusevski because you don't know what the hell is going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. And I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is he's going to be a special point guard to me. How high of a star he can be, who knows? But I do think he's a special player. And I just like the Thunder a little bit more just because they have that identity. And I know who is going to be their go-to guy in crunch time. If we get into a potential, down the stretch of the season, not necessarily the play-in, but playing in for a play-in spot.
Dude, I can't wait. I can't wait for the playoffs to start. And
I know it's going to be really interesting.
And they're down by 2. Ready? I'm setting it up for you. They're down by 2. There's 10 seconds left. Shea, they get the rebound. They get a stop. They get the rebound. Pokashevsky bringing it up the floor. SGA's like, give me the ball. We're going to set up the offense. And Pokashevsky says, nah, and waves them off. And just starts getting into his dribble package.
He starts bending his hips and starts dribbling right between his legs. He's like, all right, let's go. This is my time.
It's my time. And then
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's like slowly lowering his hand, like, no, he's not.
It's the moment that gets me. It's my favorite moment too. It's the Jeremy Lin waving off Kobe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And Kobe's just like raising his hands, like, what the fuck? And then Jeremy Lin made the shot, and Kobe was like, all right. Except with Pokuševski, is probably going to hit the side of the backboard.
It's gonna like he's gonna do the Nick Young. He's gonna shoot it and turn around, and it's just gonna airball.
No, for real. Like, well, 2 Saturdays ago, I was catching up on the Mavericks Thunder game. The Mavericks played in OKC, and literally, I'm pretty sure it was George Hill who swung the ball to Pokuševski on the left wing, but he tried a behind the back pass back up to the top of the key, and he just turned it over. He could have just normally passed it back, like, no effort whatsoever, but he was like, nah, let's add some flair to this normal routine play.
Don't make fun of Pokuševski, right?
I'm saying I love it.
He grew up playing NBA Street. He's trying to build that game breaker.
Oh, that game breaker theme.
He's trying to get those style points to build up that game breaker. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's trying to.
Man, shout out Pokuševski, man. I just think I trust the Thunder a little bit more than the Pelicans. Is all I'm saying. Like, as much as I love Zion, but real quickly, we have a new team, by the way, based on our tier list at the start of the season. We have a new team that is probably in the last tier, which is tier 6 for me. And
the Rockets.
I titled this tier simply LOL. And I have the Kings, the Timberwolves, and the Rockets in that order. Think it's safe to say the Kings are out of this. They have the worst defense in NBA history. They have absolutely checked out on Luke Walton. They have been playing a bit harder in some of these other games, but the other night they just got ramrodded by the Sixers without
ramrodded.
Yeah, without Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and it was a game where I thought I saw that Ben Simmons was out, and I was like, oh, cool. So the Sixers are just going to score 80 points. Nope. The Kings allowed like 130 points against them. And they have one of the worst defenses. The only saving grace here is that De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton are absolutely the people you build around. Marvin Bagley, he has played well and has built up.
Trade around.
Yeah, he has been building up his value to where I think a first rounder, like a late first rounder, is not a crazy asking price for Marvin Bagley because he has legit played well and he gives a shit. And I think
to be fair, the asking price for Lonzo Ball has been a first round pick, like a good first round pick.
That's why I said late first rounder for Marvin.
So yeah,
I said late first rounder for Marvin. I don't know how good the pick the first. I don't know how good the first round pick is, but I know it's not going to be like a mid or an early 20. I think it's like a late first rounder. I think he could get. I think that wouldn't surprise me. But I think Marvin Bagley's built up his trade value enough. I think they got to be sellers here at the trade deadline. I really think it would be malpractice to go in to the rest of this season, and I feel like we're having deja vu. This is like a legit deja vu moment for me on the podcast right now. It's freaking me out kind of because I was talking to somebody in this situation about the Kings and this situation, but it also might just because the Kings have been bad for a long time. But I swear, this is a team to me. They got to be sellers. They got to try to find a trade partner for Harrison Barnes, who I think has been awesome this year. Mm-hmm. They got to, I think they could get some value for Buddy Hield. But for me, they just got to get a higher draft pick and build around De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. Keep Rashawn Holmes.
Evan Mobley with them would be really interesting.
That would be interesting. I haven't dived deep into the prospects yet, even though I've been watching a lot of the March Madness tournament. But Evan Mobley would be an interesting fit with those two in particular. But I do think the Kings have things to look forward to in the future, though. I like that they dipped into the Daryl Morey tree. I want to give him a few years to sort things out because I do think Vlade had fucked this team to a degree that is very. It'll take a bit to fix some stuff. But the Kings have stuff to look forward to. But the first order of business is to fire Luke Walton. And Monty needs to get a coach that's his guy. Luke Walton wasn't Monty McNair's guy. When he came in as the president of basketball operations, he was Vlade's guy. And I think the first order of business is to get rid of Luke and have this team play in an offense that is sensible for the fastest point guard in the NBA. The fact that they are not the fact that they consistently hover around the top 10 in pace and aren't like top 3 in pace like they were under Dave Yeager is inexcusable. And I just think that the Kings just need the fresh start is still turning over, and I think that starts with Luke Walton. So the Kings are the top of this list for me. I don't know if you have any Kings thoughts, but go for it.
No, that's about it. I just want to say shout out to Luke Walton and Log D-Box. Once a Laker, always a Laker. Keep fucking the Kings. Good job, guys.
the Sacramento Queens. No, but okay. So next on this list, I have the Timberwolves, which is amazing because they still have the worst record in the NBA, despite the fact that the Rockets have lost 20 in a row.
That's
literally
insane to me.
It is literally insane. But Anthony Edwards has started to put it together over the last month, so that's something Wolves fans can cheer about.
He might steal Rookie of the Year now that LaMelo's out.
Yeah, or it's him and Halliburton. Well, Halliburton hasn't really played well since he's come back from injury, but he's starting to pick it up. But it's going to be those two for sure, which is also a bummer, by the way. I can't believe it, going back to LaMelo. Like that is just an absolute bummer. It's such a bummer. He is so fun, man. He is so fun to watch.
He was, and the thing is, like, he deserved that award so much.
He
played his ass off.
He started pulling ahead. He was he was the clear Rookie of the Year by.
Oh my god, he was so much fun to watch.
But
hey, he could still come back. We don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. But Anthony Edwards could steal this award. I'd also I'm watching this team and I'm just like, well, obviously Karl Anthony Towns has been through a lot of stuff this year, but I'm just thinking about like. I just look at Karl Anthony Towns in the same way I've looked at Devin Booker since he was drafted, and everybody was calling him a good stats, bad team guy. I think you could win games with Karl Anthony Towns, and I think with the proper team around him, if you build around his special offensive talents, I think in a way they're contenders in the same way the Nuggets are a contender around Nikola Jokic's offensive game. Now, obviously, Jokic is a tier above Karl Anthony Towns, but Karl Anthony Towns has that ceiling as an offensive player. I know we've seen it. It's just this team has been bad. Andrew Wiggins, trading Zach LaVine maybe too early, even though Zach LaVine wasn't necessarily certainly not the offensive player we know now. But just I'm thinking of like the Thunder. I was thinking about this, and then I looked on Twitter and realized I wasn't the only one thinking about this. So it's not a novel thought. I thought I had a light bulb because I saw a Twitter question. It was like, who do you think the Thunder would trade for in the next 3 years with everything they have, the draft picks, the young players, and all that?
Towns.
And I was thinking, ooh, Karl Anthony Towns. And I thought it was some unique light bulb moment. And then I look at the replies and it was Cat, Karl Anthony Towns, Cat, Karl Anthony. I was like, oh, okay. So maybe I wasn't so unique. But just imagine like if the Thunder could get Karl Anthony Towns in that culture. Now, like with the Timberwolves, like with the Kings, the Timberwolves did dip into the Daryl Morey tree, and they're not even a full season under Garrison Rosas. But I have to think he wants to start fresh at some point too. You obviously don't want to trade a player like Cat, But if it starts getting to that point,
yeah, and like, okay,
I
we
think
talked
the
about
Thunder could work at. I think the Thunder will be sniffing around soon, probably.
we did, and I think the interesting thing here too is like we brought up Wiggins earlier and how he's kind of been up and down this year with the Warriors, and like you don't really trust him. I don't trust him either, and I think that he's certainly been shorted his potential of what we thought he was when he came out in the draft. But he is playing a hell of a lot better than he did in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
yeah.
And it dawns on you of like it probably is it does come down to a culture thing there.
Mm-hmm.
And like if Towns is this good in Minnesota now, what could he be with an organization that he loves and trusts him and puts pieces around him that that he can really play with?
Like, okay, or not to go back to LaMelo, but
Charlotte.
the Hornets need a center that could do something, anything out of a pick and roll with LaMelo. Because every time
Rumors are they're trying to trade for Harrell.
Because Bismack Biyombo, he really only makes a layup when he gets spoon-fed at the rim. He can't really do anything else. Cody Zeller, my God, bless his heart, but when he tries to drive from the three-point line, when LaMelo kicks it at the top of the key, it's awful. If they just get a center that could do something out of a pick and roll off of a LaMelo pass, maybe Vucevic, like I mentioned a few weeks ago, or before on the trade deadline podcast, or when we were talking about trade scenarios, or Karl Anthony Towns, or like with the Thunder, imagine Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Karl Anthony Towns in a pick and roll. It's better than D'Angelo Russell, or like
poor D'Lo. D'Lo's gonna get stuck in Minnesota.
Yeah, D'Lo, I think, is destined to be that type of player, though.
Did you see the tweet? Someone roasted him super hard. Someone, because his nickname is deloading, right? Or like his Twitter handle's deloading.
Someone was like, "You've been deloading for 7 years." Was it that one?
It's so good, dude.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
it was the reply to that tweet he had. He was like Anthony Edwards, Rookie of the Year, right after the LaMelo news.
I feel like that's pretty tasteless, dude. Fucking, he's
well. Also, there might be some hidden stuff there because Lonzo Ball did Lonzo Ball was kind of the reason Russell was ousted in LA.
Well,
but yeah, I saw the first reply to that tweet was, "You've been deloading for 7 years now."
It's so funny to me, dude.
All right, last team before we go. A team that, if you just listen to our earlier podcast, we could not have been more wrong about this Rockets team.
We believe. To be fair, Christian Wood's been hurt.
Christian Wood has been hurt, yes, and he's awesome.
He came back and been a beast. He didn't lose a step when he came back, which is insane. But he hasn't been playing. They dropped Cousins, who he wasn't making a difference, but whatever. That was part of our original thought.
Yeah.
Okay. They didn't follow the plan. They didn't follow through.
They didn't follow the plan of the Kentucky reunion.
Okay, and then and Walls honestly looked good. Like I don't think he's looked as bad as their record shows. I think
I think physically he looks good. I just think that whole team's a mess, and I feel bad. I feel bad for Steven Silas, man, because like, imagine you get your first opportunity coaching. You think you're going to be coaching Harden and Westbrook. Westbrook and Harden allegedly gave the Rockets their blessing to hire Steven Silas. And you're thinking like, oh, cool, I'm going to coach a MVP candidate and a star player in Russell Westbrook. And then you're just, next thing you know, you're at a 20-game losing streak. And I just feel bad for Silas because it's just another, coupled with the fact that it's tough for black coaches to get a head coaching job in the NBA. And you really have to make, I think any minority in the NBA, they're forced to make this first impression that you have to have that is key to you continuing to get other jobs and moving on up in the NBA. I think it's unfortunate for Silas, but
the timing's just terrible.
The timing's just terrible, and the team is just Oladipo's just waiting to be traded. PJ Tucker was literally just meandering through the season until he got traded to a contender. Eric Gordon's hurt. they have some promising pieces. Like you said, Christian Wood has been a beast when he's been on the court this year. Didn't miss a beat when he came back from his nasty ankle injury. Jayshawn Tate is a nice rookie to have. They have little things there. They have draft picks now. They have they have draft picks. They have capital, but it's just it's bad over there at Houston, man. And by the way, it's just more hilarious because what the other basketball thing that's been circulating at least a little bit on Twitter is when Bill Simmons tried to make James Harden a Ewing theory candidate for the Rockets when the Rockets were semi-playing okay, and now they've lost 20 in a row.
Yeah.
While Harden is playing his way back into the MVP conversation. which would be in I think we're having a reckoning just real quickly before we go. I think we're about to have a reckoning with MVP voting this year. Because there is no favorite now that LeBron and Embiid's out, but it's like, oh, do we vote for Giannis again? Because he's been better than last year and the Bucks are finally turning it around. Or do we vote for Harden, the guy who showed up like, Charles Barkley does on Inside the NBA? Except on the basketball court, he literally threw the highlight that'll stick out to me is him throwing that cross court pass to John Wall almost out of bounds, just out of disgust and laziness. And he's just like, I'm done with this situation. Yeah. And now he might win MVP. So we're about to have a reckoning this year, I feel.
Definitely.
No, yeah. And it's definitely not the reckoning Papa John's is talking about. I was hoping someone would get this reference if they hear it. But yeah, man, that's my whole tier list.
I think we agree all for the most part. I think we just disagree on the gap between the teams. Yeah.
Yeah, the West is definitely packed between 5 and 10 and maybe 11 if, Zion starts actually touching the ball in crunch time, but yeah, to me, this hinges on Anthony Davis's health. I think LeBron will be fine coming back from the high ankle sprain, even though that is a bad injury.
It's not the worst injury, but it's the one that takes a while.
Yeah.
It's just one that takes weeks.
The high ankle sprain is the one where ligaments are actually kind of strained a little bit too, like in the higher part of the ankle. So we'll see. But Anthony Davis is the one where if he's healthy and the Lakers show some semblance of signs going into the playoffs, I'm fine taking them. But we're both high on the Suns, man. I love the Suns. I
absolutely love the Suns. I was on the train so fucking early, dude. As soon as they got Chris Paul, I was on.
I was on the train too, but I was more in the fifth car, just in the same spot I've been waiting in because I have loved the Devin Booker train that I was sitting on turned into the Suns train, and then I just saw you walk up to the front with the VIP ticket, like we're going to the conference finals, and it's like okay, cool, and I just read my newspaper on the fifth car. But yeah, is there any other parting conference thoughts you have before we go?
No, I did want to. I had like fun comments and fun questions, but we had not enough time for that this episode. I do want to bring up this thing though, and I think I talked about it before. I've never seen, and I've had this thought all year, and I've never seen a player get hit in the mouth more than Montrezl Harrell.
Okay.
I'm not even joking. That dude gets hit in the face.
He does.
At least 3 times a game.
I mean, I wasn't thinking of it. It's not a passing thought I have, but every time I do watch Laker games, he does seem to get popped in the face. Like there's always a camera shot of him on the floor. And I always think like, is he embellishing it so the refs can trigger a review? Yeah. Like kind of like what Jimmy Butler did earlier in the year.
It's funny though, because when you think that and then you watch the replay and you go, "Oh, dude, he got popped."
Yeah, he got popped. He sticks his nose in there, man. Like he gets it out the mud.
Yeah, like I really respect the battling that he does down low, and like obviously if you battle down low, you're gonna get clipped.
Yeah.
But like man, that guy, I feel he wears the grills. I feel like he needs to wear a mouthpiece more often because, like, dude, that, like, he gets destroyed in there.
Yeah, that seems like a hazard.
And I'm like, man, respect, dude, but like, protect
please
yourself.
wear a mouth, please wear a
please.
mouthpiece. Those expensive
your
diamonds in your grill might cut the inside of your
yeah,
lip.
for your safety and for others.
Yeah.
Like he got he's got a big ass mouth too, man. Like you gotta make sure you're not biting down on
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah. Yeah, he does get popped in the face quite a bit. And it's but you know, that's the life of a player like Montrezl Harrell, you know.
It's true. It's true. But like, man, I've never seen even like when you think about like bruiser kind of guys, I've never seen someone take as much punishment to the face as he does. Like Rodman didn't even take as many shots to the face as he does. Maybe because Rodman was more athletic and could get out of the way a little quicker.
Right.
But like, man, Trez just gets in there and he just like, dude, I've never seen it happen before where you just every time I watch him, I'm like, oh man, that looked bad. And they show the replay and there's like the ripples in his face and the jaws going off in the different direction. You're like, oh my god, he got destroyed. And
Yep.
then he just like shakes it off like a boxer and keeps going. And I was like, Jesus. I
Yep.
don't know if I'd have the mental fortitude to keep going back in there after that.
Well, you know, it's good that you know, I stopped playing high school basketball because as somebody who was playing in the post a bit, there is definitely hand-to-hand combat down there, and sometimes the hands might fly into the face or, you know, a little bit in the upper chest area, and you're just like, "Oh god." It gets dirty down there in the trenches.
Yeah, man. All right. So, yeah, I think that's it.
An hour 30.
Hour 30.
Lego.
Thanks, guys, for watching. Tune in next week. We'll have actual time for a fun question, hopefully. And, yeah, we'll see you next week.
The B.O.B.